Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the P1 podcast with Matt and Tommy. Yes, I am back from being abroad, and it feels like home. I am in the comfort of Formula One discussions and the good, beautiful man that is Tom Bellingham to run us through the Canadian Grand Prix. Isn't that right, Tommy? We're going to discuss all the ongoings from Montreal.
We sure are. It's good to have you back.
All right, mate, you could put some enthusiasm behind that. Jesus Christ. Okay,
oh, man, I miss you so much.
Thank you. Well, you're doing the impression of me on Saturday, wasn't it? So, why can you do an impression of enthusiasm here again today? But anyway, before we dive into everything Canadian Grand Prix, let's read out a 5-star review. If you want yours to be read out, please leave us a 5-star review. Tell us why, and yours may well be selected. This one's from Bups2810 from the UK. I started listening to you guys about a year ago and haven't missed an episode. When I saw you leaving your previous setting, I was gutted, finally stumbling across this podcast and listened to every episode I had missed. Can't think of a better duo to listen to waffle on about Formula One. Thank you for all the great times and keep up the amazing work. Thank you, Bups. Thank you for listening. Thank you for dealing with our waffle. We are not the most technical, but we are the most passionate.
Yeah, and I'm proud of you for the typos that I accidentally left in that you just
so
said.
Many.
Look, I'm just checking that you're still on your game. So
I beautifully navigated all of those typos and didn't Ron Burgundy it for once. Good. You can tell I'm quite tired. I got in at 3 a.m. Because my flight was cancelled from the stag do that I was on. So I had to get a different flight into a different airport, then I had to get a taxi to another airport where my car was parked and then drive home. So I am a little bit tired, but I did manage to watch the race on my phone in the airport because I was actually supposed to fly at the same time as the race, and then I started getting smug when I saw it about 2 p.m. local time where I was in Greece. I was like, oh, I can watch. Oh, my flight's delayed by an hour. I can watch this for most of the race. Oh, I don't mind this. Then 20 minutes later, the flight was cancelled, and I was like, oh, that's not good. Then I rebooked onto another flight, which still would have been during the race. Then that got delayed. I managed to literally watch up until the finish. Literally, Max came over the line as I showed my boarding pass to get on the plane. It was unbelievably timed.
The world does not allow you to miss a Formula One race.
I can still keep the streak up of not missing a live race in Formula One. I don't know the last time I didn't watch a live Formula One race, and probably the same for you, Tommy, as well. Speaking of you, Tommy,
yes.
Let's think about your most memorable moment, shall we?
Okay, we will. My most memorable moment, I think it has to be Alexander Albon's brilliant P7 in a Williams. He finished 9 seconds off a Red Bull, which is incredibly impressive. I mean, that Red Bull was a bit washed, but we'll go into that later. But yeah, Albon, if I take the negative, let's go with the negatives first. I think it's maybe slightly concerning that a Williams can hold everyone back on really old tyres.
Again, another example of that after Baku.
And the struggling of like overtaking and this massive DRS train. But even when you could overtake, we have seen it before. The Williams, if by some miracle, if a Williams got on pole, they would win the race because you literally can't pass it. Maybe Monza or something like that. But
you think Verstappen would not pass an Albon?
But exaggerating. But do you know what I mean? They're so hard to pass. Yeah, for the people that don't like sarcasm.
No.
Look, it was a great performance though, nonetheless. Brilliant on his tyres. And really made the most of those new upgrades. He had the new upgrades, Logie Sarge didn't. His car just pooped itself immediately, which is a shame. But
so run me through, because I was a little bit off the radar this weekend. What upgrades specifically, every single one of them to the nth degree, millimeters, placement and everything, what did Williams bring this weekend?
So 3 centimetres into the floor, they made the car better. They pressed the upgrades button and Albon's car is now good.
Well, there you go. That's the kind of insight you always expect from P1 with Matt and Tommy. Do we have any specifics, Tommy? Do you know what they did to the car?
Not off the top of my head.
Jeez,
I can find them.
Tommy,
I can find them.
Good. Did they change the floor?
They did, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Because I'm really glad on Funniest Tweets I said that their floor was still terrible. Maybe it still is, but they've made it slightly better, at least. And
Logan's is.
P7. Logan's is what? Oh, because
Logan didn't get the
floor.
upgrades.
Okay, fair. And he didn't finish the race. But yeah, Albon really unbelievable drive. As you say, it is a little bit concerning that he essentially has DRS throughout the entire lap and just kind of sacrifices the fact he can't really turn around corners. But that's how it worked, right? He managed to thrust himself up there. He was on hard tyres for a whopping 58 laps. Is that? Yep, that's a long old time to be on the same set of tyres. But he held off Ocon and Stroll and Bottas and all those behind. It was an absolute train and a half, but he did what was put in front of him.
He did. He managed to hold off Ocon and his twerking rear wing, which was very bizarre. Never seen that before.
That was strange, wasn't it? That really was. Before we get on to Ocon, question from Ace12 Adam. Is Williams firmly in the mix for points after their upgrades? I still think that their philosophy very much works around certain tracks with massively long straights. So perhaps we will see the likes of Spa, for one example, or Monza, those tracks where we saw Nick de Vries score a brilliant points finish when Alex was going in hospital at that point last year. So it seems that way again, that if they can somehow put themselves in the mix, of course, Albon, with a great qualifying, put himself into that mix of being able to hold off these essentially faster cars, but they couldn't pass him on the straights, and that's the best opportunity for them. So I think that it's difficult to say if it's going to be a consistent running trend. We're going to Austria next, which is not known for long straights, so I firmly believe that they'll probably get knocked out in Q1. But if their philosophy works at more tracks than it has previously, then you're flying.
Yeah, it's not known for long straights, but it is a lot of straights and not many corners. So I don't know how that car will work there, but it depends if they get ahead of anyone. But look, Albon put in a brilliant performance. Whether if he'd qualified even better, because he topped Q2, which was mad. But he could have easily started maybe 5th or 6th on the grid. Maybe he could have beaten Perez. I don't know. But it's difficult to say with Williams because we have seen this happen before, regardless of upgrades. And, he's now got these upgrades. He does have that in him. Like the Baku sprint race, for example, he did finish 8th that time. Sorry, was it 9th? Yeah, 9th. So there's no points on offer. But Williams do have it in them. Just sometimes their car, more than any other team, I'd say, where their car just sometimes on certain tracks is just like, hey, I'm really, really good this week. And then we go to the next race and they're 19th and 20th in qualifying. So it's just Williams things, but hopefully it carries on with this good run of form.
Fingers crossed, because then we get to see exactly what Alex is made of rather than trundling around at the back and beating a Haas or whatever. Now we move on to my most memorable moment. And of course, how could it be anything other than Ferrari strategy being good? I am wearing this shirt with pride. I filmed funniest tweets earlier. I'm still wearing the same shirt because Ferrari are in my good books. And, well, how have I got... So if you told me this time last year, maybe a little bit earlier when Ferrari were actually winning, that 2023 Canadian Grand Prix, I would be somewhat ecstatic about Ferrari not getting pole position, not finishing on the podium, and it being like, well, that was a decent race. Because it's changed quite dramatically, the expectations of a Ferrari fan since last year.
It has, but not to be super negative, but we're obviously applauding Ferrari's strategy right now that they've nailed it. But of course, they made the mistakes in qualifying. Leclerc made a mistake as well. Sainz blocked loads of people. This does feel like a what might have been because they were quick. Red Bull even said that they thought Ferrari might actually be their biggest challenger this weekend. I don't know if I believe that, but I do think Leclerc might have been, challenging for a podium. I mean, he started way down the order and was only 4 seconds off Hamilton. So you've got to think what might have been. And it's a shame that the one time Ferrari absolutely nailed the strategy with both cars, they started, was it 10th and 11th or something like that? So yeah. They're already on the back foot. Why couldn't it have been the race where, Leclerc has a cheeky pole or something like that, and then it could have got an amazing result? So it's great from that side. Hopefully this is moving forward. what they do. But I do feel like it's a bit of a missed opportunity at the same time.
Right. Well, look, we've been negative all year, so I am going to be positive for once. Yes, Ferrari were very washed in qualifying with how just everything went down. With that, Sainz blocking, Leclerc not being on the right tyre at the right time, in fact being on the wrong tyre at all times by the sounds of it. I did say in Funniest Tweets as well, if you've seen that episode, but of course we can dive into it a little bit more here, is I think that there's blame on Leclerc there as well, because Sainz, let's say in the race yesterday, he was told to come into the pits and told Ferrari to jog on, basically. And that obviously turned out to be the right decision. He said he felt good on the tyre. Sainz has that tenacity, that instinct to do that. I feel, and it still seems that way, that Leclerc does genuinely just go, not all the time, but kind of goes, or is led more easier to a strategy by the Ferrari team. Yeah, you see that it's the Hamilton, Verstappen. They all just tell the teams to F off if they think that, if it's wrong. Leclerc, I don't feel like perhaps shuts it down as quickly. But yes, I think in the race, they did a fantastic job. I think a lot of people were questioning when that safety car came out, oh my God, why didn't Ferrari pit? I was one of them.
We were all roasting
I'm
them
sure
on the watch
everyone
along.
was wondering that. But, and it kind of leads into your point, Tommy, about perhaps it being a slight missed opportunity, is the fact that they had some excellent pace on those medium tyres to lap 38, 39. Like that's unheard of for a Ferrari to be that good on its tyres on what is, less durable than the hards. And Leclerc, Sainz managed P4 and 5 in the end. And doing that strategy was a great idea because they were stuck in that train, the Albon train, basically. If they had pit with everyone else, they would have stayed in that train. And I highly doubt P4 and 5, at least as easily as it was, could have been achieved. You had Perez, of course, in 6th being, what can you really say about Perez's race? I'm sure we'll get into it. But for Ferrari, I am going to say you're only as good as your last race, and that race was positive. We're going to ignore qualifying, even though there's a really viral clip of Leclerc saying, watch out for traffic in the pits in qualifying, and then being released straight into a car.
Yes, that clip is very ridiculous. But we on the watch along were absolutely roasting the strategy, thinking there's no way. They've basically just sold themselves like not having a free pit stop here. I don't know what they're doing. We all thought as well, Ferrari's tyres go off, like you were saying, and why wouldn't you bag that free pit stop? But I guess, it was to get out of that Alex Albon DRS train. And then they had really good pace. And that to me is why it is a bit of a what might have been, because maybe, no, I'm not saying, Leclerc's winning the race, but maybe he is in that mix with Alonso and Hamilton and battling if he's not way down the order. So what a fight that would have been if we'd have had, 3 different cars going for P2, which is now just the thing, P2.
Yeah, we have to focus on P2 like it's P1. Leclerc only finished 4.5 seconds behind Hamilton at the end of the race. So that does make you question, what if? But I'm not going to think about that. I'm going to think about the positives. And Ferrari did a good thing, and well done, Ferrari. We are so happy for you. That was a really good strategy that no one saw coming.
And another positive is Sainz did look much more like on Leclerc's pace as well, which is a really positive thing for them.
And also I want to say to Ferrari, well done for not letting them battle for 10 laps and then losing a 1,000 seconds.
Yeah.
They made it. They were like, no, Leclerc is in front. Sainz will not attack you. It happened at several times during the race, and that was that. And that made sense for that particular point in the race.
Yeah, it's very true actually. So maybe this was the race where Vassar's like, you know what? I am going to listen to social media now and do everything that we don't normally do, and it's worked very well. So. Well done, Ferrari.
Well done, Ferrari. At Lidbedem. Ferrari have been abysmal on tyre deg this year. How did they hold on to the mediums for so long? And I think it just comes back to the point that Tommy said, that they actually were pretty damn quick this weekend. And I'm sure that they actually were able to stay in a good optimum window with those tyres. I don't think anyone expected them to go that long. I don't think they themselves probably expected to go as long as they did. But the hard tyre had a big sort of warm-up phase that Ferrari were sort of feedbacking to the drivers as well, and so on and so forth. I think the mediums just suited Ferrari particularly well. I don't know if you've heard anything more, Tommy, but I think it just is a case of them having some really good pace.
Yeah, really good pace. The hard tyres were a weird one, weren't they? Because, they looked like Verstappen was saying that, he was struggling on the tyres, and then they kind of came back in. So I guess Ferrari's thinking, as well as not just getting out the strategy in the warm-up phase, was just like, well, you can do a one-stop on these, so let's ignore the safety car and just run our race as normal and just use it that we've bunched up again. And it worked really, really well. So Ferrari fans, like yourself, Matt, will be absolutely praying every day that their tyres are like that for the rest of the season, because that has been their Achilles heel all the time.
I'm not holding out hope, but let's see, because I think that you mentioned that safety car. It almost was a little bit of a bait for some teams to go, we'll pit, we'll go
this
on the
is our free
hards.
stop,
but a lot of the drivers still did a two-stop, which is exciting, isn't it, Tommy, to see a two-stop race for the front runners? Wow, look at that! Go on, Pirelli.
I know. Do it.
As soon as they hear a sniff of Bridgestone, putting an application in to be the sole tyre supplier, they're like, have a two-stop race. Go on.
Go on. Yeah.
Have some strategy. Spain was interesting. You got Canada as well. Interesting. At Squirrelette5, do you feel the penalty for Norris was deserved? And also taking into account all the instances that were investigated during the race and not given a penalty. The Lando one, I mean, I've seen the onboard. He's slowing down. It's a safety car. I think Lando himself was very confused as to why exactly he got a penalty. I don't think it was anything over the top. It wasn't like he was backing up an entire field of cars behind him to try and get the double stack in. But this is what a lot of teams do. They do slow down to a certain degree. Obviously, the FIA must measure a delta, and he was over that, and therefore they've judged him to be unsportsmanlike, which is a very strange description of why he got a penalty, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't understand why it didn't just say safety car infringement, because a lot of people were wondering what on earth he'd done. But for me, I think this was extremely harsh. I remember Valtteri Bottas doing this about 4 times in 2021 when they were running 1-2 and just, there's a safety car, and then the one that springs to mind, I think, is Saudi, where, he goes really slow into the pits. He holds up Verstappen. Hamilton can get his pit stop in, and then Bottas can come in for his pits absolutely fine. It's one of those, for me, and this is what I thought, it was one of those weird rules where it's a rule, but they don't really enforce it. A bit like, when you're not meant to do a dummy pit stop and bring your mechanics out and, pretend you're doing a pit stop and then come back in, even though everyone does it and they've never policed it. And then, so for me, that was so weird, because we've seen this so many times before. And as soon as I saw he got a penalty, I was like, he's probably backed off here because he was right behind Oscar and they wanted a double stack. So I think that was harsh. It's either harsh or why haven't you been policing it? So the next time...
and policing it via the unsportsmanlike route is a very odd way to go down, because one, it gives no one real indication as to what that is. And since when have any of the drivers really been sportsmanlike? That they are all there for themselves and they all try and get as much of an advantage as possible. It was a very strange route to go down.
Yeah, I'll allow it if they actually, keep doing it. Like, it's you can't be like, they used to do it. So if they actually go ahead and do this now, the drivers will know not to do it, or you get a penalty. So I hope there's some consistency on that, and they have gone, you know what, we are going to knuckle down on this. So I guess in that sense, it is a bit unsporting that you're like backing the field up, but then.
Is that now a precedent now? Can you now not do that? Otherwise it's unsportsmanlike. And then how does that fit into other categories of not being sportsmanlike? Is Alonso giving it the absolute gas up that Hamilton's blocked him in the pit lane when that was the most biggest load of acting I've ever seen? Like that's not sportsmanlike, because he's trying to get Hamilton a penalty when all he had to do was decelerate by 1 mile an hour. So where does it begin? Where does it end? And it's going to be interesting to see if that comes up again.
Yeah, if you got an unsporting like behaviour penalty for a bit of S-housing, Fernando Alonso would be last every single race with a 50-second time penalty.
So there were other instances as well during the race that were not given a penalty. Can you run us through some of those?
It was one of them is the next question, but also Lando was the same one as well, that basically a lot of cars pulled out of the pits and they didn't give the unsafe releases as penalties.
So Aidan Aquilina won. Why didn't Hamilton get penalised for an unsafe release?
Because it wasn't an unsafe release.
Yeah, it was. I mean, a couple centimetres more. I think they're in trouble. Alonso does decelerate ever so slightly, but it wasn't enough to be, I would say, considered an unsafe release, because Alonso, he knew what he was doing. As I was saying, he over-dramatised that to a level of which it was obvious what he was trying to do. And I'm sure the stewards then look at that and go, come on. Like, have you ever seen I don't think Alonso's ever countered oversteer with so much lock than he did in the pit lane coming out, trying to avoid Hamilton. It was just such S-housery. I loved it because, afterwards, oh yeah, they're patting each other on the back. They're being, they're bantering. Oh, you've got slow reactions, yada, yada, yada. But Alonso has an absolute killer instinct in him and is like, oh, that was a little bit close. Let me make that look so much worse than it actually was.
Yeah, all the best drivers do it. They find that advantage out of any situation. This time, obviously, it didn't work. And, on the watch along, first time we saw it, we fell for it. But now the second you saw the onboard, I was like, I think everyone probably agrees that off board, you're like, that's an unsafe release all day. That's definitely getting a penalty. And then you watch the onboard and it's like, mate, Hamilton's not nowhere near you, but you could so easily have avoided that. And the way he's like, oh, and then there was quite a funny moment actually where Toto Wolff was like pretending to do the action and whatever. So
yeah, that's good.
I love to see it, and I don't think we're going to go into this later, but I will say that I'm absolutely loving the fact that Hamilton, Alonso, the respect that they were sort of praising each other. Same with Max as well. We saw quite possibly the most decorated podium in the history of Formula One, because you had Max up there, Alonso, Hamilton, and Adrian Newey. I think 23 titles or something on that podium with those four, which is incredible.
Wasn't 23 technically just Adrian Newey?
Oh, was it?
Yeah, because he's done 12 drivers, 11 constructors.
Oh, they were counting them as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would be
a lot.
34. Wow. So yeah, insane amount of championships and stuff. And even in the press conference afterwards, both Verstappen, Hamilton and Alonso were basically just like, it's such an honour to be sharing the podium with these great drivers and all this kind of stuff. And yeah,
I'm sorry. Right. All of that.
Secondly, but this is the thing. The second
lovey-dovey, Verstappen and Hamilton have started to be nice to each other. I'm like, what universe am I in right now? The moment one of them gets squeezed off or put in the wall, all this respect goes out the window. I mean, I love to see it because I genuinely sit there like, yeah, okay, you'd all sell, you'd all throw each other in front of the bus if it came down to a world title. But right now, they're all,
absolutely.
Aren't you? Oh, I respect you. No, I respect you. Oh, you're so lovely. I love it. No, I genuinely, it's great to watch, but I cannot wait for the second it changes through something that's like minor as well.
It was something really funny actually, because Alonso basically was like, a lot of the other drivers, they don't leave a lot of space and stuff, whereas these guys do. And then Hamilton was like, yeah. And I'm like, you don't believe that, Lewis. Like, you're really saying that Max leaves you with the most space. Are you joking? So, it was an interesting conversation, but like you say, it would change the moment it happens.
I wouldn't be surprised if Fernando Alonso is just trying to lay little eggs in these, in the Hamiltons' minds, in the Verstappen's minds. Whether it'll work or not, probably not. But in terms of like, they always respect, they always leave space. So when Alonso does send one to the inside of Max Verstappen for the lead of the Singapore Grand Prix, Max might be thinking, no, I do give some space to Fernando because we're mates. I'm sure Fernando always thinks about the long run with these kind of interviews and conversations. It is all mind games. Let's move now to a question from Max de Class. What's wrong with Perez and Stroll? Max and Alonso are much faster. Is it a skill issue? Yes.
Next.
Yeah. What is right? It honestly is a carbon copy of what happened last year, as Frank enters the room, you have to show Frank now. You can't just turn away from the camera and not show Frank. That's against the rules. There he is. There's Frankie Poo. Yes, Perez and Stroll. For Perez, it genuinely feels like deja vu. Last year, started really fast. Everyone's like, oh my God, can Perez challenge for the title? Then he just has this sequence of horrendous results and bad qualifyings, and we're all like, oh, is Perez going to keep his seat? It goes from it's literal polar opposites. And I don't know exactly whether it'll be because Perez is very much a momentum driver. If he has confidence, he can deliver. Whether he has favourite tracks, perhaps. And we always speak about his street circuit king and all this sort of stuff. Perhaps he is more suited to those kind of circuits, and everywhere else, even though Canada is technically a street circuit, he's a little bit more washed. I don't get it. Stroll, look, that man has absolutely no motivation to do. It doesn't need to keep his seat. He's turning up, Canadian Grand Prix. Oh, yeah, I'll stand in front. Everyone has the national anthem. Woo, look at me, I'm Lance Stroll, I'm Canadian. Because that's what apparently F1 do now, where they have drivers stand on their own for the national anthem, which is the most awkward thing in the world. But yeah, Stroll, I can see where his motivation may not be as high as Perez, but it is ultimately a skill issue. Because Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen are better. This is what happens in Formula One. They are better. But Perez has had a massive dip, and it all comes down to qualifying, really. When you put it down to it, he's not made Q3 in the last 3 races in a Red Bull.
Yes, this is the car that people are saying is so overpowered we need to peg it back, and Perez isn't even making Q3.
Max is OP.
It's incredibly embarrassing, really. Perez. Let's start with Perez, actually. I don't even know where to start, actually. It's just so bad, isn't it? I mean, the worst thing is, as well, he has these moments, and you don't need to be on Max's level, but now it's getting to the point where it's like embarrassingly bad when Max is so dominant. The fact that, I worked out the championship if Max wasn't there and adjusted every kind of order, basically, and Alonso would now be ahead of Perez in the championship because he's more consistent, and he'd have been getting, he wouldn't have the same number of wins, but Perez is keep having these races where he's finishing low down the order, and it's almost not an excuse to say, him starting 12th in a Red Bull and finishing 6th is not good enough, because Max has started 15th and he's got to 2nd so easily. Even if he didn't win, and then he did win in Miami when he was way down the order. So it's incredibly frustrating for fans now, because Max is winning so much. So you do have this thing of going, it happened with Bottas, where the only person that could actually challenge is his teammate, but they're not delivering. And I'd argue that Perez is doing far worse than Bottas, because at least Bottas was finishing 2nd and 3rd every race behind Hamilton, not 6th, 5th, wherever he finished in Monaco, like 16th or something. And then Stroll, the same. Just, he had one good race in Spain that I'd argue wasn't even that good, because Alonso would have beaten him anyway.
No, biggest good surprise.
And one thing I will mention with Stroll is I saw Aston Martin had, when they did their team photo, had Stroll P9 on the thing. It's like, that's not something you celebrate. When Alonso is putting it on the podium every race and you're P2, you don't get the pitboard out of Stroll and go, yeah, P9. That's not a thing. So don't do that.
But he did Bottas on the line, Tommy. It was a great result for the team.
It's actually embarrassing. So, and he wasn't even there in the photo, because obviously it was a bad race for him. So really poor, and just showing that, Max and Alonso are 2 of the best to ever do it, and showing their skill. But the fact that it's Perez and Stroll actually really does back up my theory that 2019 Racing Point was a race-winning car and should have got a lot more points. And I think if you put Max or Fernando or a Lewis Hamilton, someone like that,
wins
in a 2019 Racing Point, they are getting much better results than that. So there we go.
It's a very good point, Tommy. Let's go back in a time capsule and put someone else in that car. Let's see what happens.
We got to go back.
We got to go back. But yeah, I think that kind of covers Perez and Stroll. Disappointing, as you say. We don't have sometimes Bottas would remotely put up a challenge to Hamilton in the Mercedes. When we don't have that, and no other team can really get close, that's when it is even more frustrating, for sure. Although, perhaps with Perez really struggling to even get on the back of the Ferraris. I mean, he obviously ended 30 seconds behind Sainz after pitting at the end of the race to go for fastest lap. He couldn't catch the Ferraris. So I mean, on one hand, I'm like, Max feels like he's cruising. He had a dead bird in his brake duct, and he still won the race comfortably. And I feel like maybe there was even a bit more pace in the car. But on the other side, Perez is struggling to get through the field more and more every time he screws up qualifying. So I'm going, is that Red Bull actually getting a bit closer to the pack? Are the pack catching up? I think a little bit, but I don't think it's anywhere near enough to overthrow Verstappen at the moment.
No, Verstappen is just driving so well, and of course he has the best car and a very good car at that, but he's definitely flattering it as well, because it's just that situation that you do get in Formula One. We saw it with Hamilton at Mercedes, we've seen it with Vettel at Red Bull, where it's man and machine, just perfect harmony. The car is so suited to that driver that they can just wipe the floor with everyone, their teammate. You could put anyone else in that car, and I don't think they'd do a better job, because it's just like the car is so suited to that driver. It's a very, very good car. But look, back in 2020 and start of 2020, I think there was that run where Max was basically like, even though the Red Bull was so clearly like not the best car, he was still picking up the odd race win. He was finishing third when his teammate, whoever that was always like 11th and 12th. And we were going, God, imagine one day if Max gets a dominant car, how clear he will be. And the answer is happening right now. He's winning every single race, basically. And it's scary, because he really does look just unbeatable and doesn't seem to have a weakness. The only time he's not won is when he started 15th in Saudi and got up to the back of Perez but couldn't pass him and beat him. And then could argue, got screwed a bit by the safety car in Baku. It's not out the question that he could have won every race this year. So, yeah, it's a scary prospect for everyone else, and it doesn't look like it's going to end anytime soon either.
Absolutely not. Red Bull winning almost everything. They've won everything after Austria 2022, apart from Brazil 2022. So it's a Red Bull domination.
And did you hear the stat that lap 48 in Miami, no one's led a single lap apart from Verstappen? And that was the start of May.
Oh, lovely.
No one's even led a lap when he's done a pit.
You're ruining the sport. Yeah, with your Max Verstappen fanboying. It's too powerful.
To be fair, ever since he signed the onesie, that's it. Like, he signed the onesie at the start of this year, and it's just Grace doesn't even
you
need
transferred the powers from the Grace onesie into Max, and now he's Thanos times 1,000. It's unbelievable. Next question, Jones RF873. Could Fernando challenge Perez for vice world champion? Yes. Next question.
Yeah, genuinely could. Like I said, you correct the points. Alonso would actually be leading the championship from Perez. He's looking more consistent. Aston are kind of gassing up their upgrades as well.
And you do wonder as well, Red Bull, with these penalties that they're hanging over, the less wind tunnel time and so on and so forth, as we get further into the season, as we go into next season as well, we have a tiny bit of hope maybe. Although I am still absolutely convinced that Formula One are going to rip up the rule book and go again soon, because this sport is on a knife's edge right now. And there's a lot of conversations about this. Well, and there's a lot of, obviously, discussions on Twitter, most of them being complete and utter tripe. But you have to wonder where this is going to go in the next few years. I don't think Formula One's going to wait until 2026 to change the rules again. Not as drastic.
If Aston don't catch up,
yeah,
or someone catches up. But yeah, I think the most concerning thing is that it needs to be closer. There needs to be more unpredictability, and the overtaking has got bad. If you think where we are now, these new rules, like how hyped we were after that first race in Bahrain and even Saudi, when you had Leclerc and Verstappen swapping positions every corner, like switchbacks. Like, it was epic.
Yeah.
And then you were like, oh my God, Formula One, you've nailed it. These new rules are the best thing ever. And then now they're looking like, can we go back to 2021, please? Because we need some action.
Well, yeah, this is the problem, right? Because as much as you come out the blocks in 22, new regulations, the overtaking racing is so much better because cars can follow and there's less sliding and so on and so forth. Teams will always work to upgrade their car to have more dirty air.
Why do they have to ruin it?
It benefits them entirely. It benefits. Yeah. Of course, they want cars behind them to not be able to overtake them. So they will do everything they can, and they have, because the cars can't follow anywhere near as well as they could at the start of last year. There was some good battling in the midfield, but I would say that perhaps some of those dive bombs, some of those moves, was purely because Albon was creating the biggest train possible, and you had Lando Norris that was like, "Hey, I'll give you some action, guys. Don't you worry," and just sending it up the inside beautifully. So yeah. It's an interesting state that we're currently in Formula One, but I think you should still continue to absorb and enjoy all P1 content from here until when Formula One gets
absolutely
good. And can you imagine when we do actually get an insane race? That will hit like something else, won't it?
It will. Yeah, imagine the watch along when someone other than Verstappen wins.
Charles Leclerc wins from 20th.
Yeah. It's got to happen soon. We keep saying it. Every single race, it's like, Max there will be one race Red Bull don't win, but like you say, Brazil was the only one, and then even then it was just, they could have easily won that if Max hadn't have just wanted to just race Hamilton hard, really hard, like he normally does. So
no, they're besties now, mate, so it's fine.
Next question. Definitely won't happen again.
Next question from M. Lawrence. Do you think Aston Martin is a bit closer to Red Bull, or was Max coasting at the end there? I mean, exactly. Dead bird. I don't think they've actually said how much time that potentially lost him, if any. I imagine some. If there's a dead bird in your car, it's not exactly going to make you go faster. I don't think so. I think generally there just will be these tracks where the teams naturally just become a bit closer. Of course, lots of upgrades this weekend. But I don't think it will necessarily translate to every single weekend from here on in. And you know, Max is on the team radio. Oh, that curb nearly knocked me out. Haha. Like, the guy is chilling. He is sat back, one hand just vibing. It's a literal Sunday drive, I think, for him. I don't think he's pushed to the level of genuinely having... I mean, I'm sure he's 95%, but they're not being challenged right now, and there's no need to push. There's no need to risk the car, because there's no one in their rearview mirror at the moment.
Meanwhile, Perez is like, wait for me.
Yeah, like, quite literally.
Yeah, it does feel like Max is cruising, but it would have been fascinating to see if Alonso didn't have...
Because he had those problems, didn't he?
He had the problems, and also I think he lost some time from Hamilton being ahead, and it was clearly difficult to pass. If he'd have just even if he'd got into turn one ahead of Verstappen, it would have been really fascinating to see how that race would pan out. Dare I say, it does seem a bit closer than the start of the year, but you never know how much that is Red Bull holding back. But look, Aston Martin have been really like gassing up their upgrades and stuff, so pray for Aston Martin. I can't believe we're in a situation where, if you'd have said this last year, that we're like, Aston Martin, come on, take that fight to Red Bull because there's no one else, would have been like, what on earth is going on? But
there was that reel that went round a lot on Instagram of us, completely writing off Aston Martin's chances, because I mean, who wasn't at the time? And now, as you say, fast forward, and they are our only hope by the sounds of it. Although Ferrari, good strategy. You see what happens next. You know what I mean? On the next episode of Ferrari Heartbreak. Let's go to biggest winner now, driver or team. I mean, it's quite obviously Albon. You can go with Albon this time, Tommy, and tell me why.
Because, I mean, P7 is like a championship for Williams, particularly with how difficult it's going to be. We've said it so many times with a top four now. You're really only hoping for a 9th or 10th. And the fact that he's got a P7... he's right up there in the championship, like 12th, I think now or something, gone from like right at the bottom of the championship up to 12th, which shows that, a P7, a P8 can leapfrog you so far up the order, and equally the same for the constructors. So, yeah, it was just perfect for Williams. Really, really good result for him.
My biggest winner, and this might seem weird because he didn't score any points, is Oscar Piastri. Once again, in the mix with Lando, was ahead of Lando at the start of the race. And again, I think he's really going under the radar of how good of a job he's doing in that McLaren team, and mainly because the McLaren hasn't been very good. But you just look at the pace difference between them. It's not much at all. I think Lando still has the upper hand, but it is not a chasm. It is but mere tenths.
Yeah, but bearing in mind that, Norris would finish races like 8th or whatever, and then Daniel Ricciardo would be down in 15th, 16th, and 40 seconds down the road or whatever. Whereas Piastri, yeah, he's not beating Lando, but he's showing that they've made the right call to put him in, and really impressive from Piastri. I think that's a fair shout, even though he didn't get a point. I think it is going under the radar that he's actually doing such a good job. He was battling Lando at one point. They were like racing wheel to wheel, and dare I say that we never saw that with Daniel Ricciardo because he was rarely anywhere near Lando. So,
absolutely. We now go to biggest loser.
Haas.
I'm going to go with Russell.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Actually, fair point. Threw away a big result.
But Haas as well. Oh my God.
How was Hülkenberg? Can we just talk about this? How was Hülkenberg from a potential front row start finished 15th?
And a lap down. Well, he got completely shafted by the safety car by pitting on lap 7, I think it was, which was, an odd strategy anyway. Clearly the medium's not working on that Haas. He was actually going very slowly. I think he was getting pretty mugged at the beginning. So they obviously went for something slightly different. And then, of course, the safety car came out after that, and then he was completely out of position. So I think some of that has to be put down to the fact that he couldn't even start fighting because he had lost those positions, and then he was just on the back foot from there, really. But yeah, to be starting potentially second to finishing nowhere near the points is a painful weekend, not just for Hülkenberg, Magnussen as well. What on earth was his race? Him and Nick de Vries, it really just gave me, seeing that replay and seeing that that battle was genuinely the dustbin gif.
Yeah,
it really was. That was some of the worst wheel-to-wheel racing I think I've seen. In terms of like,
it was so clumsy, wasn't it?
It was really clumsy,
pathetic.
Yeah, very strange, pathetic. God, Tommy, pop off, mate. So yeah, but I'm going to go with Russell because he threw away potentially a really good result. I think an easy 4th in the bag. Whether he could have pushed and perhaps he would have been quicker than Hamilton, who knows? But that was an easy 4th, which he threw away with an unforced error, which was surprising to see because he was looking very quick. He was right on the back of that pack of Alonso and Hamilton, and yeah, I think he'll be pretty gutted with that one.
Yeah, and we don't normally see such a big error nowadays, particularly on tracks like this, where the walls do bite and stuff, but for him to kind of go over the sausage curb and not be able to save it and hit him in the wall, I think it's a lot rarer nowadays that you do see errors from drivers. So, and it's a big error. He was running with Hamilton. He's getting a P4 in that race if it wasn't for that. So, big mistake from George, and it's just opened up a big gap as well. Like Hamilton is doing very well in this championship. I think it has to be said that he's got a lot of points actually this year, and George is kind of dropping back through a few kind of errors and things like that now.
Needs to pick it back up, especially after he did that Sky Sports lie detector test and said he was quicker than Hamilton nowadays. So, although what driver is going to say no, my teammate's quicker than me?
Yeah, true.
It's a very good point. Right, let's now reflect on our predictions that we made on Thursday. And see, well, actually Wednesday. Don't Ron Burgundy me, Tommy. Come on, we're doing it on Wednesdays now, the predictions. And let's start with biggest good surprise. And I went for Lando Norris. Now, was he surprising? Yes, in a lot of ways. Good dive bombs.
It was surprising that he got
a penalty.
Unsportsmanlike behaviour when he's such a nice
guy.
A
point. Lovely.
No.
You?
I went for Lewis Hamilton.
Oh yeah. Also, just before you go into that, the whole "he was a nice guy" thing wasn't in commentary. Was it
Ted
Crofty was like, or was it Ted?
It.
It was Ted was like, oh, he's just such a wonderful guy, or whatever. It was something to that sort of degree that he was like gassing Lando up like he was like the second coming of Jesus. He's just the nicest man ever. I can't believe he would get an unsportsmanlike. It was just
it was a bit awkward. I was like, Ted, you're meant to be telling us why he got it, not that he's like
he's
this
a nice
lovely
person.
Oh, he's a great bloke. I'd love to go for a pint with him.
Yeah,
like, mate, tell us why. Biggest good surprise. I went for Lewis Hamilton, which I'm taking because I said if they beat a Red Bull and Perez came in.
Oh,
thanks, Perez.
No. Third, if it beat Alonso, I would have allowed you. You didn't beat Alonso.
He beat a Red Bull.
That was not a surprise.
He finished
beating Perez. That's on Perez.
He wiped the floor with his teammate.
That's Perez being floppy, not Hamilton being good.
Finished 16 places ahead of his teammate as well, like absolute goat. So yeah, biggest good surprise.
Are
Hamilton.
you actually taking a point for that?
I'm
for third.
It. Yeah.
You are disgusting in every way. If you beat me by a point, we need to talk about this. I
need some points because I'm behind.
Disgraceful. Right, okay, biggest flop, and the curse is back. I went for Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah. Shocking.
As soon as I didn't go for a top driver, the curse has returned. You better hide your favourite driver away for Austria, everyone, because I'm coming back.
Fair enough. I went for Fernando Alonso.
Which
well. I'm very happy about.
Let me guess. He didn't win the race, therefore his biggest flop.
I did say on the watch along there was a bit where what did he say? I think when he dropped behind Hamilton, I was like, oh, poor start, biggest flop. But no, you can't. Fair play to Alonso, by the way. Yeah, fair. I mean he was giving it large, wasn't he? That I am never not finishing on the podium again. And then he was a man of his word. So fair play.
He's absolutely nailed it. He knows something's coming. Pole position. I went for Alonso, which wasn't a bad shout, and you went for Verstappen because you're boring as hell. Honestly, you've used all your Verstappen tokens now. That's it. you just stop.
Yeah.
I did predict the rainy. I predicted the rainy race, and I was like rainy qualifying. Sorry, and was like, we're going to get a little Alonso pole, and at times. Alonso was fastest, and I was getting very, very excited in my bar in Greece that I was having a nice little cocktail and watching, and then of course Ferrari disasters happened, so I had to go. Most of it.
I said this in the watch along on Saturday before qualifying had happened, and it aged very well. That it's funny that when we get a little bit of rain, we're always like, "Oh, this could be someone's chance," and then you forget that Verstappen's an absolute legend in the wet and one of the best drivers on the grid, and actually he ended up putting it on pole by a second and a half, so
yep,
yeah,
okay,
good stuff.
I thought you were going to continue gassing up your boy. Okay, let's go to our top three then. In first place I went for Verstappen, you went for Verstappen, congratulations. Yep. That's a point. In second place I went for Alonso. You went for Hamilton. Yes. Get wrecked. 2 points for me, 1 point for you. And in third place, we both went for Perez, and that did not happen. Why do we keep putting Perez on the podium? We need to learn that this is not happening now, apparently, and it's Alonso and Hamilton that are the other two spots on the podium, because we know who's finishing first. And then our one crazy prediction. God damn it! At least 4 DNFs. I can't believe Kevin Magnussen and Nick de Vries did not DNF.
I know. If they hadn't have reversed out, you'd have nailed it.
Mm-hmm. And yours?
Mine was a Latifi banner, and shout out to Ariane Collette, who sent me an Insta DM, and there we go. There's a picture. P1, Nicholas Latifi, Tommy's crazy prediction. Thank you very much. Sat in the grandstand, scribbled it on a bit of paper.
No. Hold on. Firstly, amazing. Who was that again? Sorry, that did that.
Ariane.
Which one is it? Ariana or Ariane?
Ariane. I'm going to say
Let's
Ariane.
Get the name. Is it an E or an A at the end?
Arianne.
Ariane.
If anyone was in the watch along and heard me read out names, you'll know why I can't do that.
Okay, that's why. Yeah, we usually don't. You don't do the Twitch subs. No. Ariane, thank you so much for doing that. That's incredible. But there's no points because I said in the terms and conditions that it had to be on television, and it did not happen. Someone
take a picture of watching this YouTube video on your TV, and then it will be on TV.
Whoa, during the broadcast. Good.
I need to find these loopholes. Look, we've got to make this championship close.
Okay, just for Ariane, you get the point because
thank you.
She put that much effort into making it happen. So well done, Ariane.
We need one close championship this year. So come on, give me a point.
you do anything for points. You're disgusting. Okay, and that is it. We'll be doing our F1 to 10 driver ratings as always as a podcast tomorrow. So be sure to check that out, and of course, a YouTube edit will go up of that as well. Tommy, final thoughts.
Final thoughts are, just looking at the time, this was quite a long podcast, which is the classic, not a great race equals long podcast. But yeah, it's a shame because it was actually quite good at the start, but just petered out a bit. But come on, hope, Austria, please. Give us something
Austria's going to be the banger, maybe. My final thoughts are, yes, Ocon had a wobbly wing, which we were going to talk about, but didn't. Very wobbly. Surprised it didn't fall off. But if we haven't spoken about your driver enough, don't worry. Driver ratings, we'll be covering every single one of them tomorrow. So we'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Missed you all. Thanks for having me back. Glad you haven't replaced me and changed the business name and locked me out of the house. And we'll see you soon for another piece of content. Bye.
Bye.
It's so hot in here. Let me turn the fan on. Oh yeah.